I can't imagine what the family's going through. I immediately felt like just devastated.
It's been more than 2.5 months since Edward Essue, a 29-year-old black man from Innisfil, was killed by Barrie police. Instead of clarity, the facts have only grown more muddled.
It is a little personal when you could think about like, hey, that could have been like my brother, that could have been my son, that could have been my dad. It just hits you in a little bit of a different way, I think. When these things happen, certainly treating things with urgency, so responding, right away, I think is really important. Like you've mentioned, it's been some time now. I don't think it's too late necessarily to respond.
Our conversations with black community members, both on and off the record, show grief for Essue's family, fear, distrust of police, and demands for transparency and accountability that they say have gone unanswered.
Again, I know within Simcoe County, there's a number of us leaders of B3 organizations, so Black led, Black serving, Blacks focused, and it's certainly this horrific incident has been a topic of conversation amongst us. Like a lot of questions about how it happened and more about why it happened. And from what I understand, there have been two incidents, the last two incidents with the Barrie police where um, persons have been killed or died in custody have been Black men. And one being fearful because I know what I've observed in the community with interactions with police and Black and racialized and even marginalized communities. So that comes from different levels. And again, some of it being personal experience myself.
Essue was killed on March 6th following a traffic stop in which he was a passenger, not the driver. The vehicle was driven by Bailey Varley, a 25-year-old white woman. While Varley was taken to the police station, Essue was left at the scene with officers. Police say he attempted to flee and that an officer used a taser during the pursuit. Essue was killed. What followed has only deepened community frustration. Conflicting accounts emerged over the reason for the initial stop. Varley indicated it was an expired license plate, while police cited suspicion of impaired driving. Charges against her have since been dropped without an explanation.
With this incident, while all others of this nature, there should be like a public statement acknowledgement, right? There should be a commitment to ensuring, again, transparency and accountability and assuring the community that, things are going to be followed up on. I think that's something that, of course, should happen on both parts, both from the Barrie Police and then also the leaders of Barrie, which would include the mayor. I think that would be helpful. Listen, and on the community side, we know that schools they're trying to do things right. They're trying to be more inclusive. They're trying to have representation, but it just shows like even with the amount of work that has happened, how much more needs to happen.
Simcoe Community Media spoke with Natasha Shakespeare, founder of Parents Against Racism in Simcoe County, about the community's grief, the questions that remain unanswered, and what she believes needs to change. Today we have Natasha Shakespeare with us. She's the founder and president of Parents Against Racism Simcoe County. Thank you so much, Natasha, for joining me today.
Yes, I'm glad we were able to make our schedules work.
So Edward Essue, a 29-year-old black man from Innisfil, was killed after Barrie police teased him after stopping. I think it was 3 a.m. in the morning. So there was a white woman who was driving the car. She was police. There was some conflicting reports. So first, it was she said that it was expired license plate, and then police said no, she was under the influence. So when police stopped her, they smelled some alcohol. And then she was taken to the police station, and then this 29-year-old black man, Edward Essue, was in the passenger seat. He had, I believe, nothing to do with the incident. He was not driving. And then after that, because we don't have Edward with us, so we go by what police has said, that he tried to run and then he was chased, and police used the taser, and then he died in the incident. So at Simcoe Community Media, we have been reaching out to various community leaders in Barrie and Simcoe County and trying to understand the incidents and impact on Black and racial community, and then uh, h- how how was the police response, and what they believe needs to be done. So just first question. So when you heard about the incident, what was your first impression about what has happened?
I mean, I can't imagine what the family's going through. I immediately felt like just devastated. Um, and then angry, and then maybe fearful, and then sad. So just a whole range of emotions. And then certainly just have like a lot of questions about how it happened and more about why it happened. And from what I understand, there have been two incidents, the last two incidents with the Barrie police where um, persons have been killed or died in custody have been Black men. So that's something, of course, that for me, um, again, I have lots of questions about that and think about, okay, what is going on here? I think that doing this community work. So at Parents Against Racism in Simcoe County, we're in the community a lot. We're talking to folks, and there's certainly a lot of like myths or stereotypes about the Black community, and so it makes me want to point out to folks that when we look at the US and we see what's happening there with police brutality, that sometimes people feel that that is like removed, right? Like that's over there. It's not an issue here. And then maybe even they think, oh, that's something in the GTA. We certainly have seen larger police forces, the Toronto Police Force, Pia Police Force. They've come out with reports, they've come out with apologies, they've come out with strategies because of the overrepresentation of violence against Black folks and racialized folks. And then when it's happening in our own local community, I'm not sure that people are connecting the dots. And so there is, for me at least, a lot of unanswered questions. I don't know that there's been a lot of information out there yet, but these things happen in our community as well. Something that all police forces are kind of mandated to do is they have to collect use of force data. And use of force data is they're tracking anytime they use of force, which would include, of course, a taser and all sorts of those things. And even within our local police department, and we have many in Simcoe County, but specifically with Barrie, that their data reflects whatever all other data says across the province, across the country, that there is an overrepresentation of force used on Black and racialized communities, and that's local. And for me, again, it's like, what is all that about, and what are we doing about that? And what I mean by overrepresentation is like there is I don't remember the exact numbers. I was trying to pull up the report, but they show that there is a smaller Black population, we'll say 8% or 7% of Simcoe County or whatever it may be, in this situation, for Barrie. And then, but in their use of force data, that it seems to impact more than 8%. And that doesn't really make sense. If you're like 8% of the community, how are more people than that, being being the victims of, or in circumstances where use of force is being used? It doesn't really make sense. Like if you're a smaller part of the population, there should be a small percentage of you that is having that experience, but that's not the case. So that's what it means to be overrepresented in those numbers, and that's concerning. Certainly, there are systemic pieces, right? That's usually acknowledged, and even locally, I think that there are systemic issues in policing. But then when something as horrifying happens as this, it highlights that for me and makes it more prominent, because it is happening in our community, and certainly want to be able to have accountability and transparency about that, so that hopefully in some way there can be some kind of trust and relationship built with the Black and racialized communities, who are the ones that are significantly impacted by these kind of situations.
Yeah, and then another question, I talked to another, one Black community leader on record, Michael Mintz, and then some on, I don't know, off the record. They did not want it to be interviewed. One thing they mentioned was how this incident was addressed, talked about, like killed
Mhm.
versus died. So it's So how is how is do you think the language that has been used? And they told me that it's about the responsibility and accountability when the language such as this is used.
No, 100%. I mean, I can agree with that. The language is so important because it it potentially kind of takes away from what happened if we're not identifying it correctly. Again, there's a lot of things that we don't know, but to say that he was killed is accurate. And that word comes, I think, with a different weight and a different impact and a different meaning than, oh, he just died. So I think it's really the language is really important. And again, I couldn't speak for the family, but I would like to think like again, using the proper language is going to make a difference and how it lands, right? Like certainly there's community interest to know what happened, what's gonna happen. And so maybe that's something as a community we need to question. Again, I know within Simcoe County, there's a number of us leaders of B3 organizations, so Black led, Black serving, Blacks focused, and it's certainly this horrific incident has been a topic of conversation amongst us. So, it maybe makes me think that we need to, as a community, be a little more vocal and asking so that we can, hopefully be assured that, um, again, there's going to be some transparency with what happened here.
Black people are overrepresented when it comes to use of force and the criminal justice system. So how do you think the reaction should have been from the police chief or Barrie mayor or the council when it comes to instance like this?
I mean, I think with this incident, while all others of this nature, there should be like a public statement acknowledgement, right? There should be a commitment to ensuring, again, transparency and accountability and assuring the community that, things are going to be followed up on. I think that's something that, of course, should happen on both parts, both from the Barrie Police and then also the leaders of Barrie, which would include the mayor. I think that would be helpful in, you know, trying to relieve, for some folks, not everybody, but trying to relieve some folks in the Black community that things are going to move forward and answers will be provided. So I mean, that would be of course, that would, I think, be helpful. But beyond just a statement, we have to make sure that they actually follow through with whatever they commit to, right? So, like I said, with this and any other kind of fatal incident, I think as, um, you know, given their roles, both the police and leaders, the mayor and also all the political leaders in our community, you should be answering to the community, right, as part of your role. So um, certainly being public about the aspects that they can be would be helpful for the community and showing that they're going to again operate with transparency.
And another thing, when I was talking to Michael Min, so what really puzzled him was how the incident unfolded and how police react to it. A person is running away. First thing is, it gets mentioned a lot, the trust or maybe lack of it between Black community and police. That could be one of the reason he tried to run, if and we don't know what
Mhm.
transpired, you know um, and if there was a body camera, I know those details have not been shared, and so he was really puzzled about
Mhm.
that one thing. And the
Yeah.
second thing is police's reaction, how you are dealing with somebody is running and how you are using a force when something like this happened, and then how does you feel about your security, family member, a children's security, and how the whole interaction unfolds between police and Black community members.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, certainly, like I said earlier, when you asked about kind of, how I felt about it, and I listed a range of emotions, and one of them being fear. One of them being fear because of my own personal experiences and interactions with police, and one being fearful because I know what I've observed in the community with interactions with police and Black and racialized and even marginalized communities. So that comes from different levels, and again, some of it being personal experience myself. And certainly the one thing that again I keep referencing is transparency. There's a lot of things that we don't know. So like there is a lot of questions about what happened in that interaction. From what I understand, he was a passenger. He wasn't driving. They were concerned about the driver. I believe the driver was arrested or charged, whatever it may be. So, you know, he wasn't a person of interest, or he wasn't a suspect, or that we know of, right? And I do, again, like you're saying, and others have said, I do really wonder about that interaction and if local police really have an understanding of being trauma informed. I know that's something that I've heard that language used, and but really, is it put into practice? And I can completely understand being in that situation and being fearful and wanting to escape or wanting to run away. And not that they've done anything wrong. And in this situation, we don't know that he did anything wrong. Um, and just being fearful and kind of going into fight mode or having a lot of anxiety about that and just wanting to get out of that interaction and leaving that situation, and then somehow that turned into him being killed. I certainly, like I said, I have a ton of questions about that, and I wonder, how that situation particularly was responded to, and if there was an understanding of really being trauma informed, would they looked at him in a different way, like, looking at him and seeing, okay, this is a Black man, this is an interaction with the police, this is what we understand about some historical and ongoing issues with police in the Black community. How can we respond to this? Like, if that was fully thought of and put into action, would it have been different? Like, again, there's just so many unknowns. But certainly for me, it does make me think about, I'm a nerd, right? So I'm really into the stats and the data, and some people get bored by that. But so like I do know the stats, and I do know that again, the Black community in particular does experience use of force higher than other communities. And so it's like, well, why is that? And what is that at play here? Of course, that's something I think about right away.
So how do you think, you talked a little bit about how police uh, you know uh, should have responded to the incident, how the politicians should have responded then happened. So how do you think uh, you know about not only about the incidents but about addressing the concerns of Black community? How do you think they can still do it? What they can do now, to assure
Attempt to,
Black
yeah.
community? Yeah.
I mean, you know, when these things happen, certainly treating things with urgency, so responding, right away, I think is really important. Like you've mentioned, it's been some time now. I don't think it's too late necessarily to respond. Um, but again, and I can't speak for the entire Black community because we all have different thoughts and experiences, especially when it comes to police, and especially even when it comes to, the local politicians and how involved folks want to be. But, they should be at least attempting to engage with the Black community who wants to, and beyond attempting with them. I mean, I say this in so many forums, but in this forum and with this system and as well, they really should be looking to the Black community to guide them in how to respond and what to do, because we don't want folks speaking for the Black community or moving forward in a way that's harmful just because they truly don't have the lived experience to understand, right? So, I think there is still an opportunity to be saying, okay, what should we be doing? How should we do it? And inviting us to the table, so to speak, to really be thoroughly involved. And I say that again, knowing that some folks would not necessarily want to be that involved, but speaking to the folks who want to be, and like I said, leading. And also, I think what comes with that is, again, you have to be really cautious and trauma informed, and when you're doing that, because of the specific, history with the Black community and police, but also the ongoing current trends with police in the Black community.
So just picking up, some points from your last response is, do you believe there should have been, a Barrie mayor or police chief should have, or still can invite, reach out to the Black community saying, let's meet, let's talk about, your concern in the community, because that has not been done. There has
Yeah,
been.
for sure. I don't think it's too late. Whether it's this concern, other concerns, talking about in the future, so we can prevent black men or black folks in particular being killed by police. Like, and again, like Simcoe County is a huge area. I know this incident was in Barrie, but I don't think it's too late to start those conversations because, at least in my mind, it's not a one-time conversation, right? If you're truly working with community, it's going to be ongoing. It isn't gonna be a one-off conversation. So I don't know that it's too late. Is it gonna have the impact that it had, or is the Black community gonna be as trusting as it because it's happening later than I think it should? Yeah, that may be a possibility. But that's part of building relationships is they're going to be ups and downs. And sometimes you gotta own and fess up maybe when you didn't go about things in the best way.
Just last couple of questions, it's your organization, if you are comfortable. What was the impetus, what was the reason behind starting Parents Against Racism, Simcoe County for you?
Yeah, I feel like with a lot of nonprofit work, it starts out of something that someone experienced. And so part of my journey was navigating the education system when my child experienced some, pretty significant anti-Black racism. And there just wasn't any resources locally, and I could not navigate on my own. I had to build community and bring in community. And thankfully, there were folks that were able to do that, but they were outside of the region. And so through that journey, just was like, you know what? This isn't a journey you can do alone. It's exhausting, and you need people to help you navigate. And that's just kind of where it started. And now we've been a nonprofit for 4 years, and last school year alone, we had over 90 intakes. So, we're helping families navigate systems, primarily education system, but also child welfare, policing system, so healthcare. And so we are very busy. And even in our community work, what also kind of leads us to being concerned or having worries about the Black community and police interactions is that, we have seen interactions with police and youth through our schoolwork and being in the community. And if I'm being honest, sometimes we're like, ugh, they could have been better, right? And certainly we've talked about that openly. Like one of our current concerns, if police are coming back into schools, what does that look like for Black, Indigenous, racialized, and marginalized students? Because they are over surveilled, right? And then is that going to be an opportunity for a negative interaction that's going to impact them outside of school? We've seen those things happen, and the data nerd in me, like there's lots of research, there's lots of data that talks about that. So, that's a concern as well. When I think about when I shared like all these emotions, that's part of it, right? There's just so much that's entrenched. But yeah, that's the work that we do. We are busy, but we are just showing up for families and youth in the community and just helping to make sure that their voice is heard and they're getting all the supports and resources that they need.
So just last question, like what do you think is some of the, you mentioned about the school system, and other issues that Black families reach out to you, or maybe other racial families as well. So what are the some of the biggest concerns you see from Black community, and what some of the solutions, you talked about, reaching out to the community, talking to them. So what are the some of the concerns, and what are the solutions you see in this?
Yeah. I mean, it's wild some of the things that happen in the community, and just as an example, because it's recent, it's ongoing. This parent has been very public about it, but supporting a family to navigate right now where their child was on a kill list, like there's just the most egregious horrific things that you could imagine happen to Black and racialized youth in our community. And sometimes, if a parent isn't talking about them openly, again, people don't actually know or understand what these youth are experiencing. So those are the types of situations that we are helping families navigate. Sometimes it's not as egregious at that, but you never know what the impact's going to be for that youth, whether it's yeah, being called the N-word or your child's on a kill list, or someone is just making fun of you and won't play with you because your skin color. You never know how it's going to land. And so that's really what we talk about when we're helping folks navigate this situation. But I can say 100% of the time, with every single, family, caregiver, youth that we have supported, what always is a reoccurring theme is they come to us because they aren't feeling heard. They're coming to us because it's not the first situation. It's never the first situation. And it doesn't matter if they're in the kindergarten or if they're in grade 12 or whatever it may be. It's never the first situation that they come to us as. So that tells us that, things that are happening aren't getting resolved. And that families are being dismissed or youth are being dismissed. So that's something that we can say across the board. That is, through and through. And whether their parent has, tried to bring it up or has had a meeting or sent an email or whatever it may be. And sometimes this is where the miscommunication can happen and not understanding like the relationships with the Black community. And this across all systems. So now even thinking about the education system is sometimes truly on their end, they think that they've got it, right? They think it's good, but it's not good, and they don't have that understanding of like, oh, we thought we did well, the meeting went well, and the family reaches out to us and they're like, oh, they're truly surprised, right? Because just not having the lived experience and understanding of what really happens and how things really landed for a family, they're not picking up on that, right? So across the board, families are feeling like dismissed and not heard, and the range of situations are, everything you can imagine. Again, if you've read any report, the Dreams Delayed report by the Ontario Human Rights Commission is a huge document. It talks about all the trends that are happening in the education system, and all those things are happening locally as well.
Yeah, even I work as a reporter, but even when my son is in grade three, and even I don't know
Mm,
sometimes how to react. And like it was just a normal day for him. He was playing with they have the buddy system, so he was just hanging out with the friends and those older kids, and all of a sudden they start talking about how dark he is. And so it's
mm.
for them, it's like, and then he just came home and he was like upset, confused, and crying. And then he had like no idea why, like why even they are talking about it, and like why that's and with and then we had like I think he talked to the teacher, but it's even like we don't know like how how we can address this thing, how we can assure him how, because then all of a sudden you start feeling like you are not part of the
Of
community,
course.
you're not part of
You feel like
yeah.
outside of the community, you're
Yeah.
othered, and again, that just speaks to the system. And listen, on the community side, we know that schools, they're trying to do things, right? They're trying to be more inclusive, they're trying to have representation, but it just shows, like, even with the amount of work that has happened, how much more needs to happen, right? Because it should be in the school environment, in a classroom, that it's so normalized to be celebrating folks from different walks of life, right? Different classes, different ethnicities, different cultures, different genders, like whatever it is. It should be just so normal to be seeing that every day, whether it's actually people in your class or what's on the walls or what's being taught or what's celebrated, like that people don't think, oh, why is your skin so much darker, right? It just is, it would just be normalized. And so we're so far away from that, even though some of this work has already been done. And depending on the school or where area, they've been at it for a long time, but it just shows that there's just more work to do. Right. And not that those efforts aren't welcomed and not that they should stop. It just, again, for in the community, we can say, hey, we know you're doing these great things, but more needs to happen.
So yeah. So any last message or anything at the end you want to uh, leave the audience with?
No, I mean, really, with the Edward situation, certainly, folks we're watching and we're listening, and we'll definitely be following up, right, about kind of what happened and where to go from here. Because, of course, it should be concerning for everybody, I think. But, it is a little personal when you could think about, like, hey, that could have been like my brother, that could have been my son, that could have been my dad. It just hits you in a little bit of a different way, I think. And like I said, of the range of the emotions, one of those things is fear. It's fear of, hey, could that be my experience as well, right? And so certainly as a community where policing is going to be our community, we want to really, figure out how they're going to be able to really change their system.
For Simcoe Community Media, I am Deepak Bidwai. This story was supported by the Local Journalism Initiative.